Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at her 14-month-old son's fever chart, watching those numbers climb higher with each passing hour. His tiny body, usually so full of energy and laughter, lay limp against her chest, and his persistent whimper had transformed into something almost worse: silence. It was the kind of silence that makes a mother's heart stop beating. The pediatrician's office had just closed, and the prescription they'd rushed to fill sat incomplete because their insurance company had denied the medication. $20.99 stood between her son and the antibiotics he desperately needed, and Sarah had exactly $14 in her checking account until Friday. That's when everything changed. Working as an administrative assistant at Morrison & Associates, a Fortune 500 financial firm, had never felt particularly meaningful to Sarah. She filed documents, scheduled meetings, answered phones, and tried to be invisible, the way corporate America preferred their support staff to be. Her boss, Marcus Wellington III, was the kind of CEO who existed in the upper stratosphere of corporate hierarchy. She had exchanged perhaps 12 words with him in the 14 months she'd been employed there. He rode down from the executive floor in a private elevator, arrived in a car with a driver, and conducted his business behind mahogany doors and frosted glass. He was, in every conceivable way, untouchable. This particular Tuesday morning, Sarah had called in as she often did when Jamie was sick. But unlike other times, she hadn't recovered enough to go in by noon. Desperate to keep her job and mindful of her precarious financial position, she'd answered emails from home, forwarding documents and preparing files for the afternoon's meeting. She was doing this while cradling Jamie against her shoulder, pressing cool washcloths to his forehead between keystrokes, when her phone buzzed with an urgent request for the medical authorization forms needed for a corporate wellness program renewal. Sarah, running on no sleep and pure survival instinct, had automatically reached for the file on her desktop. Her vision blurred from exhaustion. Her fingers moved on automatic pilot. She attached the document and hit send before her brain fully registered what she'd done. The realization struck like a physical blow. She hadn't sent the wellness program forms. She'd sent Jamie's complete medical file, his pediatric history, the prescription, his recent diagnosis, everything. And she'd sent it to Marcus Wellington Morrison Associates Com. Her stomach dropped so violently she thought she might be sick. She imagined Marcus Wellington, in his corner office on the 42nd floor, opening an email that revealed nothing about her competence as an employee and everything about her failure as a provider. The humiliation burned hot. She was certain this would be used as grounds for termination. She was certain she'd just destroyed her carefully balanced life. Her hands flew across the keyboard as she typed out an apology email, her vision blurring with tears of frustration and panic. 3 minutes later, her phone rang. It was Marcus Wellington's executive assistant. "Mr. Wellington would like to speak with you," the crisp voice said. "He's calling now." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as the call connected. In all her time at the company, she had never received a direct call from the CEO. When he spoke, his voice surprised her, not cold and distant as she'd expected, but measured and oddly warm. "Ms. Sarah Chen?" he asked, and she found herself nodding even though he couldn't see her. "I received your email. Both of them. I want you to know that I'm not calling to reprimand you." She opened her mouth, but nothing emerged. "I'm calling," he continued, "because I've just read that your son has acute bacterial infection and that you're having difficulty accessing his medication. Is that correct?" The question was so unexpected, so achingly gentle, that Sarah felt her composure fracture completely. She managed a whisper of confirmation. Give me 30 minutes, Marcus said. I need you to do exactly 3 things. First, give my assistant your pediatrician's name and phone number. Second, stay on the line with my driver when he arrives at your address. Third, take your son to the pharmacy on 5th and Main. Can you do that? Bewildered, Sarah complied with each instruction like someone in a dream. She'd heard the stories about Marcus Wellington, the ruthless businessman who'd tripled company profits, the man who'd survived cutthroat boardroom battles and emerged victorious. Every time, this gentle firmness didn't match the mythology. Within minutes, a black sedan arrived at her modest apartment. The driver, a woman named Patricia, walked her to the car with a thermos of herbal tea and a soft smile. At the pharmacy, the pharmacist greeted them by name and filled Jamie's prescription immediately, paid in full. How is this possible? Sarah asked Patricia, her voice shaking. Mr. Wellington called the hospital administrator, who called your pediatrician, who verified the prescription and the urgent need. The company's healthcare partner absorbed the cost, Patricia explained simply. He said something before I left the office. He asked me to tell you that when his daughter was born, he couldn't afford her medication either. He said he understands what it's like to choose between rent and medicine. In that moment, something shifted in Sarah's understanding of the world. This man, whose wealth seemed infinite, who wore watches that cost more than her monthly rent, had once stood where she stood. He had once held a sick child and felt that particular form of terror that comes with impossible choices. Over the following weeks, as Jamie recovered and returned to his normal, exuberant self, Sarah found herself seeing her job differently, and when she returned to the office, there was an official notice of her promotion to senior, administrative coordinator with a salary, increase in better benefits. Benefits that included comprehensive pediatric coverage. She never asked whether the promotion had been warranted or whether it was connected to the incident. She simply accepted it as another unexpected grace in a life that had suddenly become a little less precarious. But the real change wasn't in her circumstances, though those improved too. The real change was in her understanding of what it means to be human in a world that often teaches us to climb over each other toward success. Marcus Wellington, with all his power and resources, had chosen to use them not as weapons but as wings, to lift someone else up rather than to maintain his distance from those below him. Sarah never forgot the man who'd answered her email on a morning when everything felt impossible, and years later when she herself had climbed high enough to help others. She made certain to remember what it felt like to be at the bottom, looking up, hoping someone would care enough to look back. She thought of Jamie, healthy and thriving, and of the CEO who understood that the most important measure of success isn't what we accumulate for ourselves, but what we're willing to give away to heal others. In the end, Sarah learned that kindness isn't weakness, empathy isn't a liability, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply remember where we came from and reach back to help someone still climbing.